Hello and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. I got a new mic, so hopefully this video sounds better than normal. I promised it last time, and here it is, an early Christmas present, one of my favorite mercenary units. They are mech warriors, they are archaeologists, they are difficult to control, and they have two major source books. Today, we are looking at one of the most interesting mercenary units in all of BattleTech, Snord's Irregulars. The symbol of Snord's Irregulars is based off of various coins from the United States of America, a country from Old Terra. They either use the Standing Liberty Quarter design or the Buffalo Nickel design. Both have appeared in source books, so it is unclear if they changed the symbol over the years or use both symbols interchangeably. There are no standard colors for the Irregulars. Every pilot was allowed to express themselves with their own color scheme, making the unit very distinct on the battlefield due to the variety of designs their opponents would see. There is quite a bit of history for Snord's Irregulars, and multiple books based around the unit. If you want to skip spoilers, then go to the time listed. The story of the Irregulars began with the Wolf's Dragoons, a mercenary unit that was formed by the clans in order to reconnoiter the Inner Sphere. During the long trip, Jamie Wolf made a plan with Cranston Snord to put the odd pilot's skills to use as an extension of this recon force. Snord was to form a small team and search out old Star League bases, which appeared in the records of the Exodus fleet. The Dragoons arrived in 3005, near the Federated Suns. They quickly took up a contract with the Suns, and would be sent on a mission not long after. The world of Halloran V was used as a raiding base by the Blackwind Lancers and Marion's Highlanders for the Capellan Confederation. Zeta Battalion and the Dragoon Aerospace Forces stormed in and took the main Capellan base on the world. Meanwhile, Cranston Snord led a team from Epsilon Regiment. They raided a different Capellan base to steal an antique pipe collection. The Dragoons would win the battle overall, but Snord looked like an insubordinate soldier for his actions. After the battle, Jamie Wolf would do a public dismissal of Cranston Snord due to disobeying orders at Halloran. Snord would leave to start his secret mission. Of note, dummy corporations were designed to finance Snord's mission while hiding his Dragoon support. Comstar would investigate, but would not find any information that would give them clear answers about the origins of the Dragoons or Snord after he started his mercenary force. Cranston Snord would arrive on crossing with nothing more than his archer in 3007. He would get into a poker game with mercenary commander Melvin McPhinney. Snord would win and gained command of McPhinney's Manglers. The unit did not have much in terms of assets. They had a beat-up Union-class dropship, 2 functional mechs, 3 broken mechs, 1 functional aircraft, and 4 broken aerofighters. Worse than that, the mercenaries had major debts. Snord took steps to improve the pathetic mercenaries he had won. He got some spare parts in secret from the Dragoons and financing from the dummy corporations in order to fix the machines he could. When the work was completed, the unit had a lance of mechs and 2 fighters. It wasn't much, but enough to get the unit off the ground. The team would grow with other members of the Wolf's Dragoons, who were given falsified identification to look like Inner Sphere-born mercenaries. When they arrived, they brought Snord's daughter, which probably raised a few eyebrows amongst the Manglers. This added more soldiers and mechs to the Manglers, expanding their size to a more sustainable unit. Of note, one of the pilots was Terry Malvinson, who had orders to kill Snord if he ever gave away the origin of the Dragoons. Cranston Snord would take up a contract with House Merrick for a year in exchange for clearing the debts of the mercenary unit. They would be sent to the Lyran border and would end up being involved in the fighting on Rochelle. The Lyrans invaded in force, and the world was only defended by small mercenary commands. The fighting was intense, and many mercenary units would get shattered in the successful defense of Rochelle. Most of the units would suffer about 70% losses. However, Snord's team was one of the few to come out in decent shape. Many of the dispossessed mercenaries and shattered remains of units joined up with McFinney's Manglers, which expanded the unit even further. However, the FWLM would move in on Rochelle and use a loophole in the salvage laws to take equipment from the mercenaries to rebuild League losses. This outraged the mercenaries, and Cranston Snord led an uprising against the worn-out and beat-up League forces. Melvin McFinney would get killed while fighting against the 15th Merrick Militia. The mercenaries would escape and would hold a grudge against House Merrick for a long time due to their treatment after the Battle of Rochelle. The fleeing mercenaries made it into the Lyran Commonwealth and would negotiate a new contract. This would be a low-paying contract, but it allowed Cranston Snord to choose the worlds he wanted to be stationed upon. In addition to that, they would get repairs and a base on the world of Clinton. At this time, the unit would be renamed Snord's Irregulars. The choice of Clinton was a deliberate one. Snord sent troops to the world to find a lost Castle Bryan, a Star League-era fortress. When the location of the Lost Fortress was confirmed, the contract was signed, and Snord's Irregulars were sent to a world the Lyrans viewed as worthless. During this time, the Irregulars would do at least 6 major attacks on the Free Worlds League between 3008 and 3017. After they took time to rebuild, the Irregulars were offered a mission to help defend New Kyoto from the Free Worlds League. They took the job to deal out some revenge, and to seek out a cache of artwork that was stored on the world. The Irregulars did a combat drop and were able to take a FWLM supply depot by surprise. They would follow this up by taking out a League command post afterwards. Their efforts were enough to drive off the FWLM forces in 2 months. They were honored by Katrina Steiner and found a vault full of old art that they sent to their base on Clinton. The next major operation was an assault on Wing. Part of this mission was to find a book collection. As the fighting continued, the Irregulars intercepted a message about a library being moved to a dropship. They would disobey orders and make a move into the enemy rear territory, where they captured the transports full of books. The raid would cause the Lyrans to think that the Irregulars had been defeated. Worse yet, it made the League give chase. The Irregulars would get trapped by the larger League forces. The Lyran forces would take advantage of the gap in the League defenses and move in. The Lyrans would end up saving the overwhelmed mercenaries. While this would be a victory for the Irregulars, they needed to sell part of their collection to rebuild after the intense fighting. The next mission would be on Denias, where the Irregulars worked with the 32nd Lyran Guards. Snord's plan was to look for a crashed dropship that contained valuable musical instruments. Unfortunately, the Irregulars did not know the Free Worlds League was building a new aerospace fighter factory and had reinforced the world. Apparently, the FWLM base was in the crashed dropship that the Irregulars were looking for. They would get another win and take home more rare artifacts. The next major operation was in 3009, on the world of Alula Australis. Snord chose the mission in hopes of finding rare paintings. They teamed up with the 19th Lyran Guards and would be attacked by the 405th Aerospace Wing. The 405th was a skilled unit that struck from a hidden base using aerofighters alongside a Phoenix Hawk Lamb and 3 Stinger Lambs. They found the enemy base and were able to destroy enough of the enemy assets in order to allow the Raider team to leave the world with their spoils. Later that year, Cranston Snord would join Jamie Wolfe on the return to clan space. He would give a report alongside the Dragoon leadership. Part of this report included discoveries of 5 old Star League bases, but they were all empty. However, there are contradictions to this based on the fact that the battles Snord would serve in during this time would mean that he did not return to clan space. Meanwhile, in the Inner Sphere, the Irregulars would take the relics they had found and build a museum on Clinton that became a major tourist destination. Despite their reputation for insubordination, they had earned the approval of Katrina Steiner, who would visit their museum on occasion. In 3010, the Irregulars would be sent to Uhuru as support. A 5-man team would do a night raid against an FWLM supply depot used by the 15th Merrick Militia. The team would get caught in a trap and face newly developed jamming equipment. Cranston Snord and Samuel Sneed would arrive to rescue the raiding party. While the attack was a failure, the information about the jammer was valuable intelligence. The next year, the Irregulars would join in on the Lyran invasion of Diodana. They took the job in hopes of finding the Tome of Rigo, a religious book. The Lyran commander, Colonel Arthur Folde, did not like the Irregulars and would send them on the most dangerous assignments. This also included dropping the Irregulars in the middle of the Jarvis Military Proving and Training Grounds, which also had a large minefield. The Irregulars would have to fight past veteran units while attempting to meet up with the rest of the Arcturan Guards. Colonel Folde would state that the Irregulars were off looting rather than doing their job. Colonel Snord believed that his team had been dropped off at the wrong location deliberately as a means of destroying his unit. In June 3012, Snord's Irregulars would team up with the Kellhounds on a mission to Castor. This would be the first major mission for the Kellhounds. The goal of the operation was to destroy an old atomic weapons stockpile, but the Irregulars were also hunting for a set of Fabergé eggs. They would encounter the 13th Merrick Militia. The Lyran team easily handled the 13th and would destroy the atomic weapons stockpile prior to the weapons being used as a desperation attack by the Merrick Militia. The colonel of the 13th would be captured, and the Fabergé eggs would make their way to the museum on Clinton. The next treasure hunt was in 3013 on Nestor. They were searching for a consignment of vintage brandy from Old Terra that was on its way to Janos Merrick's palace. The Lyran forces overwhelmed the FWLM troops, while the Irregulars' recon lance would leave the battle behind to chase down the convoy carrying the brandy. The recon lance faced off with 3 riflemen and an Ost scout. The riflemen were autocannon versions and ran out of ammo in the fight. The Irregulars would claim the spoils, and the Lyrans would claim the world. There was an odd encounter on the world of Lorik. The Wolf's Dragoons would raid the world, and Snord's Irregulars would play defense and win. They would capture 3 mechs, but return the pilots to the Dragoons. This boosted the reputation of the Irregulars, as they were one of the few units who could beat the early-era Dragoons. Unknown to the Lyrans, the battle was fought with clan traditions, where pilots and units would avoid taking major damage. It was staged so that the cousin units would not harm each other in the fight. They would fight on amity and take a loss against the Merrick forces, but find the Jewel of Sumatra in the mission. They also returned to Rochelle to find a lost archive, and found it while dealing with skilled local forces. They would go on a mission to Shiloh with the 10th Sky Rangers. The Rangers didn't mind the Irregulars going off treasure hunting because they considered the mercenaries to be troublemakers. The Irregulars would fight their way past local troops to find old Star League-era mines. The numerous attacks on the Free Worlds League would lead Janos Merrick to seek revenge by planning an attack on Clinton. In February 3017, the Merrick forces attacked, while the Irregulars were busy fighting the Merrick Regulars on Lorik. The museum was raided with many treasures stolen or destroyed. This nearly bankrupted the Irregulars, but they were given support by Katrina Steiner to keep them afloat. Things turned around when the Irregulars discovered where the treasures had been brought. The plan was brought together to get back their treasures and take revenge on House Merrick. This would be dubbed Operation Junkyard Dog. The first part of the mission would be a deep raid on the world of Nathan. The resort world was where the stolen art had been taken in order to be auctioned off. The Irregular ship was given stolen codes to disguise it as an FWLM ship, arriving on Nathan for R&R. They arrived in March 3018. Their surprise attack was enough to throw off the Merrick forces, and over the course of 2 weeks, the Irregulars would recover many of their stolen goods. They would leave before any Merrick reinforcements could arrive. The Merrick military went to guard the border in hopes of catching the Irregulars. However, Operation Junkyard Dog went into the next phase as they went to Holt, where the House Merrick residence was located. The surprise attack would lead to an easy win against the Household Guards and the Rainbow Company of the 27th Merrick Militia. The Irregulars took back more of their stolen treasures and took military supplies from the Guards. They took Governor Jason Merrick Torrenson, third cousin of Janos Merrick, hostage. They would use Merrick Torrenson as leverage to move past various blockades while leaving the world. The shift in the FWLM position caused by the hunt for the Irregulars allowed the Lyrans to attack the world of Oliver. This created enough of a distraction for the Irregulars to make it home to Clinton with their recovered treasures. They would also give Governor Merrick Torrenson to Katrina Steiner as a gift. The hostage would be ransomed back to the Free Worlds League not long afterwards. Enraged, Janos Merrick sent Karp's commandos after the Irregulars. The commandos were made up of criminals and washouts, with the goal of causing as much damage as possible before they were killed. However, Snord's Irregulars would easily handle the low-quality force with no major damage. Afterward, the Irregulars did need to sell some of their treasures in order to finance the repairs and recovery after the long raid into League territory. In 3020, the Irregulars would be challenged to assault a fortress on McAfee, where some of their lost treasures had been stored. This was obviously a trap, and the 3rd Battalion of the 2nd Free Worlds Guards were poised to ambush and destroy the Irregulars. However, Snord landed his troops during a major storm, and would send his units underwater to flank the ambushers. They would get behind the 3rd Battalion by moving along the ocean and would hit them hard. This destroyed a lance of mechs and caused the guards to withdraw. The art and treasures were quickly taken from the fortress, and Snord's Irregulars left the world and salvage behind before their enemy could regroup and attempt another attack. Cranston Snord would send a taunting message to Janos Merrick afterwards. The commander of the Merrick team would get demoted and sent to Atreus to face a board of inquiry for his massive failure. After they rebuilt, the Irregulars were sent to Alexandria near the Draconis Combine border alongside the 12th Star Guards and 32nd Lyran Guards. Snord was fine with this, as the world had an old Star League base, and at one time it was known for its museums. Sadly, most of what they were searching for was destroyed. When they finally found some statues and artifacts, they were ambushed by the Rosselhog Regulars. They chose to target the artifacts first, and would have destroyed the Irregulars, but the enemy archers had defective ammunition. After a difficult 7-month-long campaign, Alexandria was taken for the Commonwealth, but all that the Irregulars had gained was more repair bills. In 3022, the fully repaired mercenaries were sent to Tamar to help defend the besieged world. They would land in the middle of the Karita forces. With skill and luck, the Irregulars were able to hold the city of Rance. General Oscom, the Karita commander, would offer the Irregulars a contract at twice the pay, but after some arguing between Oscom and Snord, an improved offer from Katrina Steiner arrived, making the whole discussion pointless. They would return to their base on Clinton to repair. Despite their successes, and the money made by the museum, they were still in debt. In 3023, the Irregulars were posted on Hyde to guard an important water treatment facility. The Irregulars began doing some excavation work, and due to their search for treasure, the 23rd Huron Regiment thought the world was unprotected, so the Irregulars were able to take the invaders by surprise with little trouble. The next mission was in 3025, where they went to the frozen world of Thecta. They were sent to guard a Lyran construction site that had been raided several times. Snord was also interested because of the story of a Colossus-class dropship that crashed during the end of the Star League era. In order to draw the League forces into a trap, the Irregulars acted like they were distracted by treasure hunting, while a fake water treatment plant was built as bait. When the Merrick forces attacked, they found the facility was filled with explosives. The Irregulars took care of the remaining forces over the next 2 days. Only a single lance of Merrick's soldiers made their way off the world. This battle is also notable as it was the first mission for Cranston's daughter, Rhonda Snord. The Irregulars did find the dropship, which had plenty of supplies and functional centuries-old battle mechs. They took their spoils and returned to Clinton. They made sure to hide as much of the lost tech as they could, and gave Katrina Steiner a portion of the spoils, including the dropship, as a thank you for her years of support. Colonel Wolfe ordered the Irregulars to not use the lost tech, as it would get the attention of the great houses. On the good side, their debts were finally clear. In 3025, they were on Zanaya in order to drive back a Free Worlds League invasion. In the process, they came across a heavily damaged crimson-colored archer. They recovered the pilot, but he had lost his memory. They could find no record of him in the Steiner or Merrick databases, and he took the name Marcus Shake, then joined the Irregulars. More importantly, they added infantry, armor, and aerospace units to their formations, and became a mixed battalion by 3026. As the Fourth Succession War broke out, the Irregulars were not brought into the LCAF's invasion plans. Instead, they were set as a reserve unit doing garrison duty. They would learn of possible treasure on Valders, so Snord requested to join the assault in late 3028. They would go with the 2nd Narhal's Raiders and battle the 3rd Valders Armored Assault Company. Rhonda Snord's company worked with the Raiders to take down the opposing forces. The Irregulars would then search the ruins of the city, while the Raiders were having trouble in the north with more of the Valder defenders. The Irregulars reluctantly went north, doing long-range scans to find their allies. During their search, they stumbled upon the enemy command bunker. It led to a short fight with light mechs and infantry. But soon, the Irregulars were facing off with the 1st Valders Regiment, who stormed out of the base. It was a tough fight, but the bunker was taken and the command staff captured. After that, the remaining Karita forces fell after 4 days. The Irregulars would discover that the command bunker was part of a Star League facility. The Irregulars would excavate several Star League-era vehicles and battle mechs that were again stored on Clinton and kept away from the Inner Sphere military. As the war continued, Snord's Irregulars would go to Bordon to face their old enemy, the 13th Merrick Militia, in 3029. The mission was designed to distract the League military from targeting the Tikhonov Free Republic. In the raid, they would steal the throne of Stefan Amaris, which was held in the local museum. Not long after, the team would go to Connacht in an attempt to take a collection of over 2,000 antique coins from a recently excavated bank. They would face off with the Griffins. Both units would take heavy damage in the fighting. After the war, the team returned to Clinton. However, Cranston and Rhonda Snord met up with the Dragoons secretly. Jamie Wolfe explained his worries about a future clan invasion and how he was planning to pull the Dragoons away from the clans. They agreed with his views. Wolfe also asked them to survey the world of Outreach to see if old facilities still remained. The Irregulars would request a station on Outreach and would survey the world for 6 months. They gave their report to Jamie Wolfe and a false report to the Federated Commonwealth, stating that they found nothing. Not long after that, the Dragoons were given Outreach as a base world with the infrastructure to keep their forces in good condition. Cranston Snord would have an unfortunate encounter with Wayne Waco in 3032. At a bar on Tharkad, Waco confronted Snord about his connection to the Dragoons. Snord admitted that he was friends of Jamie Wolfe, but that anything else was none of Waco's business. Waco, who had a grudge against the Dragoons, would end his contract with House Steiner and take up a contract with House Merrick due to this conversation. 2 months later, this encounter would lead to a fight. Waco would bring his troops to Nakkatunga and challenged the Irregulars to a fight with a priceless set of 32nd century Deming's crystals. Snord realized this was a trap and planned accordingly. The Irregulars would use captured commercial dropships to go down and had their main dropships hold orbit as distractions. The infantry team would head out and secure the crystals. Then, the empty dropships would land to draw the Rangers towards them. However, the Irregulars were spotted by a scout team, and a battle occurred with a minor part of the Waco Rangers, as the crystals were being moved to the dropships. Then, the Irregulars would use the terrain to their advantage and get into a fight with the command force of the Rangers. After a short and fierce fight, the Waco Rangers were defeated. However, Snord let them go because he had no ill will towards the Rangers. By 3033, the efforts of the Irregulars had paid off, as they had built up to a full battalion with full armor, infantry, and aerospace support. Sadly, in 3034, Cranston Snord suffered a major heart attack. He survived, but was no longer able to be a functional mech warrior. Thus, he moved his focus to research and intelligence gathering. At this time, his daughter Rhonda Snord took command. The 30s were also a time where many of the original team members would retire or transfer to other roles within the team. Thus, Rhonda would start recruiting new pilots oftentimes eccentrics, just like many of the early members of Snord's Irregulars. Despite his health, the misadventures of Cranston Snord would not come to an end. In 3037, he and Jake Walmar would sneak into Janos Merrick's tomb and place a wreath of flowers upon his grave. They would drink a toast to the man with the brandy they had stolen back in 3013. In his eulogy for Janos, Snord would comment on how their rivalry was good-natured fun. He also ended his speech with the traditional Selah. Meanwhile, Rhonda would talk with Jamie Wolfe about the option of taking the lost tech equipment they had found and start using it to strengthen the Irregulars. Upon approval, Rhonda made it seem as if the equipment had been taken from the comm guards in a region where the comm guards were not located. This would then be built upon other rumors that they had spread, saying that they stole them from Terra in a quick raid and that they had located them in their treasure hunts, which was actually the truth. The Irregulars would be teamed up with the Gravewalkers, 3rd Davian Guards, 3rd Lyran Guards, and 17th Recon Regiment as part of the attack on Vega. They faced off with the 5th Amphibian Light Assault Group and the 14th Legion of Vega. The 5th would go after the mercenaries, but the advanced equipment of the Irregulars gave them an edge in the battle. They destroyed a battalion, and the damage done by the other mercenaries would cause the 5th to flee the world. The Fedcom forces defeated the 14th, and the world was taken for the Federated Commonwealth. The Combine counterattack would take the world back in July. The mercenaries were left to garrison the world as the rest of the team moved on. The arrival of the 2nd and rebuilt 14th Legion of Vega, as well as the 2nd Dairon Regulars, were too much for the garrison forces. After Vega was taken back, the Irregulars returned to Clinton in order to recover. When Katrina Steiner died in January 3040, her daughter, Melissa Steiner Davian, would continue her mother's efforts to support Snord's Irregulars. After the war, Rhonda would start sending her troops to outreach for improved training every year in order to not only have the Irregulars use advanced equipment, but also advanced training. Snord's Irregulars would be informed by the Wolf's Dragoons that they had been given recall orders by the clans. The Irregulars would follow the Dragoons by denying the request and siding with the Inner Sphere. As the clan invasion progressed, Cranston Snord and Jake Walmar would conclude research on a lost SLDF fleet depot called Camelot Command. They believed it would give them an edge in fighting the clans. They determined that Apollo would have the data about the exact location of the base, and the Irregulars would head out in 3051. Unknown to the Irregulars, the Somerset Strikers had found the base in the previous year, but it had been classified by the AFFC. When the team arrived at Apollo, they discovered Clan Jade Falcon held the world. Snord's Irregulars set up a trial of possession for an orbital survey station. After they won, Rhonda took 2 Omnimechs and some bondsmen as a prize for Clan Snord. They found the information they needed and left for the Dark Nebula. The Jade Falcons would give chase after finding data chips that were left behind by the Irregulars. After 3 weeks, they found Camelot Command in the Dark Nebula. It was shut down and stripped of anything important. Despite that, the Irregulars' techs believed they could get the station functional within 2 years. The Irregulars' jump ship left to report their findings. While the main force was stuck at the station, the Jade Falcons arrived with a warship and dropships. The Darkwing cluster arrived for a trial of possession. It was a tough fight, but the Irregulars won at great cost. The Falcon soldiers, gear, and dropships would become part of the Irregulars, helping balance out the losses. Cranston Snord would arrive a week after the battle with a team of techs to help put the station back online. 3 years later, Jade Falcon Sakhan Vander von Christu wanted the Irregulars wiped out. The 8th Falcon Regulars and the 124th Striker Cluster went on the attack. Both teams did not work well together, and the Irregulars were able to hold them off. In 3055, Cranston Snord returned to Clinton with a lance of battlemechs. A battalion of troops were sent to Edisich, and the rest of the troops were on Camelot Command. Rhonda Snord wanted to run raids into the Jade Falcon occupied zone, but was denied by the AFFC. By 3059, the Irregulars would build up to 2 battalions. When the Fedcom Civil War broke out, Snord's Irregulars used a clause in their contract to not get involved in Civil War-based engagements. In 3063, their contract was about to end, and the Irregulars were sent to Odessa as a defense in hopes of keeping them in the Lyran alliance. Meanwhile, Archer's Avengers were sent to negotiate with the Irregulars to get them to either join the Federated Sons or at least remain neutral. Unfortunately, a plan by the Lyrans would lead the two units into fighting in hopes of destroying the Avengers and punishing the Irregulars for not wanting to work with the Lyran alliance. Rhonda would get wounded, and her daughter, Alexandria Natasha Snord, would take temporary command. Things would go badly for the Irregulars as they got pinned down, but the recovery of Rhonda and the intelligence gained by the Avengers would slowly reveal the plot against both sides. Once the deception was discovered, the Irregulars and Avengers would work together to crush the Lyran forces that plotted against them. Afterward, Archer Christofori would continue his negotiations. The Irregulars would remain neutral and would move to the clan border to avoid the remainder of the war. The Irregulars would hold off some Clan Jade Falcon raids in the Ark Royal defense cordon. Snord's Irregulars would be part of the Lyran Alliance counterattack on Clan Jade Falcon during the Falcon incursion in 3064. The Irregulars would face off with the 124th Striker Cluster once again on Rossel Gethi. The Lyran forces retreated, and the Irregulars would go to the jointly controlled world of Blair Athol for the remainder of the war. In 3070, Clan Jade Falcon decided to take the world of Blair Athol. The garrison force of 3 Airy clusters attacked, and Snord's Irregulars would fight for 6 months with hit-and-run strikes. The Irregulars nearly destroyed the Gear Falcon Airy, but they had to retreat and the world would fall to the Falcons. However, the campaign would leave the 3 Eerie clusters in shambles. The Irregulars would have to retreat back to New Exford. The world was protected by Clan Wolf in Exile, and Snord's Irregulars would take time to repair and refit before they would be able to head out again. Rhonda Snord would join a delegation at Ark Royal to discuss how to stop the Word of Blake in 3073. However, the meeting was attacked by a terrorist bomber, and Rhonda Snord, amongst other key military personnel, would die. To make matters worse, the Word of Blake would hit their homeworld of Clinton, destroying their base and dealing heavy damage to the Snord Museum. These events were a major morale crush for the unit, and left them struggling for years. After the chaos of the Word of Blake War, Alexandria Snord would try to keep the unit together. They would be back to battalion strength and trying to rebuild on Clinton in 3085. Later, she would pass down command to her son, Alexander. He was not well suited to the mercenary life, and tried to avoid conflict if possible. This would cause further decline in the Irregulars, as the unit took mostly boring garrison work. At some point in the Dark Age, the Irregulars would take a contract with the Federated Sons. They would be stationed on Jaipur in the Capellan March. Snord's Irregulars would get a change in their organization in 3140, when Joshua Snord took command. He created rigorous tests for the unit to determine who would stay and who would be drummed out. He would dismiss the worst members of the unit and bring in new talent. In 3144, they would face off with the Dynasty Guards on Jaipur. Despite the improvements to the unit, they would not be up to the old high standards. Thus, they had to retreat, and the world would be taken by the Capellans. They would move to Bakum and garrison the world by 3145. When they had recovered from their defeat, the Irregulars would raid the world of Clinton in 3147. This was a mission to recover anything of value that might still be left on the world, but they would have to face the 26th Wolf Garrison Cluster. The raid would be successful, and many things were liberated from the old Snord Museum. They would earn back some prestige for the raid, and after selling some of the spoils, they would have enough money to rebuild into a reinforced battalion for the first time in decades. By 3150, the Irregulars were on contract to the Oberon Confederation. They were garrisoning Boot Hold, which would be attacked by Clan Hell's horses. They would fight the 11th Mechanized Cavalry Cluster, and the Irregulars would hold the line as the civilians and scientists evacuated the world. After that, the Irregulars would leave the world to Clan Ponyta, Hell's horses. This is where the story stops, with Snord's Irregulars stationed in the new Oberon Confederation. The Irregulars are not as strong as they once were, but they are still a scrappy unit and have plenty of history yet to come. While the Wolf's Dragoons had a huge impact on the Inner Sphere, Snord's Irregulars are like the goofy little brother who had silly adventures. They aren't weak by any means, but they aren't known for their battle prowess either. Their cultural impact is great due to the popularity of the museum, but they did not change history in any major way. Still, they did try to preserve history, and that has to count for something. There are many generations of Irregulars. Here are some of the most notable mech warriors. Melvin McPhinney, the commander of McPhinney's Manglers, who lost the unit to Cranston Snord in a poker game. He became the de facto XO, but he would also die in one of the early missions on Rochelle. He piloted a Whitworth. Cranston Snord, the freeborn son of a Clan Wolf merchant family. He was a good warrior, but he had difficulty following clan traditions and was always occupied with learning more about the Star League. He went with the Wolf's Dragoons and took his free-birth daughter. He was a commander in Epsilon Battalion. He was chosen to lead a new team due to his eccentricities and would bring together Snord's Irregulars. He was always seeking the next treasure and was highly respected by his team. He piloted an archer and eventually a bombardier. Rhonda Snord, Cranston Snord's daughter, who arrived with her father in the Inner Sphere at the age of 6. She was wounded on her first mission, and if not for Dragoon Advanced Medical Technology, she would not have been able to continue piloting a mech. She took command in 3037 and would expand the unit with Lost Tech. She would lead the Irregulars to their greatest heights. Rhonda enjoyed blasting rock music in battle and was a big fan of Elvis. She would die on Ark Royal in 3073 during a terrorist attack. She piloted a Shadowhawk, then a Star League Highlander. Terry Trooper Malvinson, the son of merchant caste parents who volunteered for the Dragoons with his brother John. They would leave the Dragoons to serve with the Irregulars. Terry was part of the 3rd Company Command Lance, but would be severely wounded on Holt in 3019. He pilots a Phoenix Hawk, then later a Lancelot. Samuel Shorty Sneed. He began as a tech and would be an early member of the Irregulars. He would smuggle in parts and build his own mech to earn his status as a mech warrior. He would become the commander of the 2nd Company. He would be killed on Odessa in 3063 as part of a plot against Archer's Avengers. He piloted a Frankenmech, recognized as a rifleman. After 3037, he would pilot a Crockett, then later he piloted a Lancelot. Deb Hachu. Born to a well-known family in the Lyran Commonwealth, her brothers served with the 14th Lyran Guards. She has a tendency of collecting mementos from those she has killed in battle and display them on her mech. She would become a company commander. She piloted a Thunderbolt, later she piloted an Exterminator. Jake Walmar, an Inner Sphere-born mech warrior who joined in 3026. He liked collecting original books from the Star League era. He would be heavily wounded in the 4th Succession War and would retire in 3034. He would become the librarian of the Clinton Museum. He piloted a Warhammer. Dennis Maltesta, a longtime member of the 3rd Crucis Lancers, who was known for acquiring jewelry and gems, but not always legally. He would be kicked out of the military and joined Snord's Irregulars in 3037. His jewelry collection was housed in the museum. His piloting and other skills would be put to use quite often in the Irregulars. He piloted an Excalibur. Marcos Sheikh, a mysterious pilot found on Zanaya in 3025. He lost his memory, and no record in the Free Worlds League or Lyran Commonwealth showed his existence, despite the fact that he looked like Thomas Merrick and was found wearing an LCAF uniform. He took the last name Sheikh due to the nervous twitch in his left arm. He was a skilled pilot known for finishing enemies with melee attacks. He piloted an archer, then later a bombardier. Alexandria Natasha Snord. She was orphaned in a Free Worlds League raid on Clinton. She would be adopted by Rhonda Snord and would later join the unit. Prior to the FedCom Civil War, she would be Rhonda's second-in-command. She would be given command after the battle on Odessa in 3063. She pilots a Spartan. Joshua Snord. He took command in 3140 at the age of 23 when his father retired. He took steps to bring the unit back to glory by removing poor pilots and replacing them with skilled recruits. He also liked the spotlight and was friendly with the press. He loves to tell stories of his adventures and show off his skills. He pilots a Highlander. Elizabeth Lizzie Sneed. A descendant of Samuel Sneed, she was very proud of her family's legacy and very protective of her lancemates and tech staff. She took the time to personally restore her family's rifleman Frankenmech and bring it up to Dark Age standards. She pilots a heavily modified rifleman. Snord's Irregulars are a fun group when it comes to both their mech lineup and their strategy. The Irregulars range from less than a company to a 2-battalion force. Due to usually being smaller than their enemy, the Irregulars use irregular tactics, if you don't mind the pun, using terrain distractions and other ways of trapping their enemy. The first company is made up of mechs, the second company includes the armor and aerospace assets, and the third company includes the infantry. As of 3026, the second company was nicknamed Shorty's Scavengers, and the third was Rhonda Snord's Irregulars. The third company would lose their nickname in 37 as Rhonda took over as commander of the Irregulars. The mech lineup begins with low-grade equipment that is maintained and occasionally upgraded by top-skilled techs. However, in 3037, they started to bring out old Star League era equipment they had found on their expeditions. This turned them into a small but mighty team that did well for themselves even against the clans. Due to their success against the clans, the Irregulars would also add bondsmen and clan tech to their lineup, making the unit even more powerful. While they do not always have access to armor or arrow fighters, they did deploy them in several eras. Most importantly, when Rhonda Snord refitted the battalion, she added advanced arrow fighters and armor to the roster, providing some improved fire support for their mechs. Beyond that, the Irregulars had acquired various jump and drop ships, so they could get their treasures and go. There are some fun entries in the fiction for Snord's Irregulars. Dispatch is a fun short story in the 88 anthology. Permanent Losses has the honor of being the last story published on Battlecore. And Call of Duty is the second book in the amazing Archer's Avengers trilogy. Beyond that, the 2 main source books are excellent, and there is plenty of other books to fill in the gaps. Remember, some of these books may only have basic information about the unit. One of the strangest parts of Snord's Irregulars is that their first sourcebook, Cranston Snord's Irregulars, has major inconsistencies with their established lore. So it was retconned as misinformation that was used to obscure the real history of the Irregulars. It made organizing the lore a major pain, because determining what actually happened, when it happened, and how it happened was much more difficult than I expected. I still love the unit, but making this video was more of a chore than I would have liked. It was an adventure going through their history, and despite the fact that they were essentially created to be a comedy unit, they have enough interesting moments to make them more than the joke they were intended to be. Hopefully there will be more adventures for these oddball mercenary treasure hunters. When it comes to painting up a unit, I think Snord's Irregulars is a fun choice. There is no standard paint scheme, so you get to have all the creativity you could want while painting. There are plenty of missions between the 2 main source books, and the team is fun for random matchups. If you have painted up a team of Irregulars, then let me know in the comments because I'd love to see them. As the new year dawns, I'll start covering the houses as they were established. In January, I will be discussing the 12th Atrain Dragoons and their mercenary spin-off, Hansen's Rough Riders. Then, in February, I will be covering a Davian unit and another mercenary unit. If you have suggestions, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. As the year comes to a close, I am very grateful for all the new subscribers. I hope you have a happy holiday season. May your weapons stay hot and your reactors stay cool. Until next time, please check out the other videos, and I'll see you at the tavern.